I have an intuition that Friedrich Nietzsche, was unable to bridge a certain gap. This was the end of his reach. And it is exactly the point where he needed to make a bridge between the night of the heart and the night of the thoughts that he both embodied. Okay, so Nietzsche was a person that was deeply instinctive and intuitive. So he often let himself be taken over by archetypes. Carl Gustav Jung himself diagnosed Nietzsche's Zarathustra as an inflation of the sage, the wise old man. And this took Nietzsche over in his final big magnum opus. But Nietzsche also was a great philologist and poet, and in his poetry he lets these archetypes shine as well. There is parts in Ecce Homo where he engages in self-aggrandizement. He kind of lets narcissism completely take him over and express overtly how he praises himself with titles like why I am so healthy, why I am so smart, or things like that. And then he releases a self-praise about self-importance of his work. And it's absolutely captivating and interesting and embarrassing to read this, because it confronts us with a wound in culture and collective subconsciousness. Because in the ancient Greek time, it would be very normal to read a hymn of somebody who praises himself. And it would not create this dissonance, this dissonant echo of embarrassment or shame about this. So we would just read it and say, well, yes, this is what the person is. And I think Nietzsche holds the mirror to us, that this change came, that self-aggrandizement, that narcissism is not accepted in social groups anymore. In other words, we learn that we have to not shine too bright, too small, to make us small, to not exhibit our grandiosity in a group. Language has turned in a way that we try to speak and talk ourselves small. And I think Nietzsche just wants to make us aware by holding this mirror in front of us, okay? And I mean, I have also seen this in artists like Kanye West. I don't want to overrate him because he is definitely not a match to Nietzsche, but in his self-aggrandizing and narcissistic expressions, it is very similar. I watched an interview once where Kanye West claimed to be the most influential writer since a few thousand years and writing the most profound things ever and stuff like that. And this, it has the same self-praise like Nietzsche. But in Nietzsche's case, why when we read this it's so profound is because in Nietzsche's case, we can say in some way he's right. What he says is right, but it can't be right. So we are in a kind of in a big problem. I realized this also in the way of Wagner's fame and Nietzsche's fame. If we compare it, the fame of Wagner is like dead pictures that Wagner created, so is rather on the Apollinic side of the game, creating pictures, finished pictures in itself, a product that is a linear way, is existing in a linear way. So the fame of Wagner is constant and not changing, but rather fading in time, while Nietzsche, in his lifetime, was not acknowledged, and he is also not working systematically. He rejected the systems of philosophical and scientific work and just was an eruption, an explosion of meaning and provocation in his freestyle, and nobody was able to match him in his philologic, poetic freestyle. Therefore, people had to hide behind systems and criticize him in a polemic way because nobody was able to face this man in his discipline. And when a man like this, that is not acknowledged in his lifetime, already in his lifetime speaks so grandiose about himself, and then reality later catches up to this explanation, like the fame of Nietzsche is rising, it's going up, while the fame of Wagner stays the same, or rather goes slowly down, because slowly this very important figure of Wagner gets slowly less influential, while Nietzsche is just on the rise exponentially. So this creates a great dissonance, and I think it shows us a wound and a development in humanity and language and culture that we can think about. And what I want to say about Nietzsche is, I think he couldn't make the bridge between this fencer and swordsman that he is, this masculine, hypermasculine way of thinking or conducting oneself, and being at the same time the knight of the hearts, so a deeply loving person, proposing amor fati and seeing life drive as, and the worldly life still as the only thing that really matters. And he proposes the leap of faith in life and love, not like Kierkegaard in a spiritual manner. So Nietzsche is the most life-affirming philosopher that we know, that is in existence. And he cannot bridge, in the end of his life and in his work, the need for empathy and the need for cunning, healthy exercise of power, the will to power and compassion and love. He can't bridge this, but he leaves this to later philosophers and people, I think. That's when he's fully aware that his superhuman, his Übermensch, has to be an ocean in which all the dirty stream that man is can perish. In other words, an extraordinary person needs to take in a lot of negativity projection, introjects that mother, introjects death drive projected from other people, envy and so on, and simply let it perish in himself. So he knows the importance of forgiveness, just like Jesus knew this for great people. But at the same time, he proposed to free ourselves from the moral implications that hold back our power. He even says that the moral system is just a compensatory mechanism for not being able to exercise one's power. Therefore, he speaks for he encourages the individual to exercise its power and not be compromised by moral or mercy, but at the same time, he is compassionate and forgiving in some way, which is a contradiction that he never solved. He did not solve. Yeah, so I think this is why Nietzsche did not overcome narcissism in some way. So I think he predicted the problems, all the problems related to this, and he prepared mankind to overcome this challenge. We call, when we talk about Nietzsche, we call it nihilism. So Nietzsche stumbled across the problem of nihilism. But I think all the ideas, impulses, great leaps of thought, and the flexibility to look through the moral system by showing us different perspectives when going back to ancient Greece and even further back to a pre-moral age gives us a flexibility to see beyond this and free ourselves from these implications. And this is exactly, amongst other things that Nietzsche gave us, the ingredients that we need to overcome today's problems with narcissism. Okay, so, but there's still work to do, and part of this is to find a bridge between the Knight of the Swords and the Knight of the Heart, which both Nietzsche embodied.